Welcome to our channel, the place where knowledge meets curiosity. Here, we dive deep into the wonders of history, science, culture, and mysteries that shape our world. Every video is designed to open your mind and spark your imagination. So sit back, relax, and let's begin this incredible journey together. Now we explore, explain, the rise and glory of Aztec civilization.
In the heart of ancient Mesoamerica, long before the Spanish ships appeared on the horizon, rose one of the most remarkable and complex societies in human history, the Aztec Civilization. Emerging from the misty valleys and rugged highlands of central Mexico, the Aztecs, or the Mexica people, carved out a mighty empire that dazzled the world with its grandeur, precision, and power. The story of the Aztecs is not simply one of conquest and sacrifice. It is a story of migration, vision, faith, ingenuity, and unyielding determination. It is the chronicle of a people who transformed swamps into cities, myths into law, and dreams into empires. The roots of the Aztec civilization trace back to the early 13th century, when several nomadic tribes wandered through the arid plateaus of northern Mexico. Among them were the Mexica, a humble group guided by a prophecy from their gods. According to legend, the Mexica were told by their chief deity, Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, to seek a new home, a place where they would see an eagle perched on a cactus devouring a serpent. This vision, they believed, would mark the destined land where they were to build a great city. For years, they roamed the desolate landscapes, facing hunger, hostility, and hardship. Their journey was both physical and spiritual, filled with omens, sacrifices, and divine visions that bound them together as a people chosen by the gods. Their wandering eventually led them to the Valley of Mexico, a fertile basin surrounded by towering mountains and dotted with shimmering lakes. Here lay the remnants of older civilizations, the Toltecs, the Teotihuacanos, and others who had once ruled with splendor. The Mexica, upon arrival, were not seen as powerful. They were poor, ragged, and often despised by neighboring city-states. Forced to live on the swampy, marginal lands near Lake Texcoco, they struggled to survive. Yet what appeared as misfortune soon turned into destiny. The very marshes that others avoided became the foundation of one of the greatest cities ever built in the pre-Columbian world. Legend tells that around 1325 CE, the Mexica saw the long-awaited sign, an eagle perched on a prickly pear cactus, clutching a serpent in its beak. Overwhelmed by divine revelation, they began constructing their sacred city on that very spot, a city they named Tenochtitlán. Built on a series of small islands within Lake Texcoco, Tenochtitlán was both a marvel of engineering and a symbol of divine purpose. The Mexica used ingenious techniques to create chinampas, or floating gardens, which allowed them to cultivate crops atop the shallow lake waters. These man-made islands yielded abundant maize, beans, squash, and chili peppers, the staples of their diet.
From its humble beginnings, Tenochtitlán grew into an awe-inspiring metropolis. Broad causeways connected it to the mainland, while canals crisscrossed the city, functioning as both streets and waterways. Stone temples rose toward the sky. Marketplaces bustled with traders from distant lands, and the hum of thousands of citizens filled the air. By the early 16th century, the city's population may have surpassed 200,000, rivaling or even exceeding many of the great cities of Europe at the time. Visitors later described it as shimmering like a mirage in the sun, a city that seemed to float upon water, glittering with white stone and gold. The rise of the Aztecs, however, was not purely architectural or agricultural. It was spiritual and political. Religion lay at the very heart of Aztec life, influencing every law, ritual, and act of war. The Aztecs believed their gods required human energy to sustain the universe, especially the sun, which they thought needed nourishment in the form of blood sacrifices to rise each day. This belief system created an empire not just of soldiers but of devotees who viewed war as sacred duty. Conquering new lands was not merely about gaining territory, it was about capturing prisoners to appease the gods. As Tenochtitlan flourished, the Mexica forged alliances with neighboring states. The most important of these was the Triple Alliance, formed around 1428 CE between Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan. Together, these city-states dominated the Valley of Mexico and beyond. Through diplomacy, trade, and war, they extended their influence over vast territories, from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific coast. Tributes flowed into the capital: gold, feathers, cacao, jade, cotton, and precious stones, enriching the city and funding monumental construction projects. At the center of this empire stood the emperor known as the Huitzilopochtli, meaning great speaker. He was both a political leader and a divine representative of the gods. Among the most famous of these rulers was Itzcoatl, who restructured the empire and redefined its ideology. He ordered the rewriting of history, erasing the memory of earlier defeats and framing the Mexica as a people destined to rule by divine will. This act of historical revision gave the Aztecs a powerful sense of identity and legitimacy. Following him, Moctezuma I expanded the empire through military campaigns and reform. Under his reign, the Aztec Empire entered a golden age of prosperity and order. The Templo Mayor, the great temple of Tenochtitlan, was rebuilt on a grand scale, symbolizing the dual power of the gods: Huitzilopochtli, the sun and war deity, and Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility. The temple's two shrines stood side by side atop a massive stepped pyramid, representing the delicate balance between war and life, between destruction and creation. Aztec society was meticulously organized. At its foundation were the calpulli, or neighborhood clans, which function as both social and administrative units. Each calpulli provided labor, soldiers, and taxes for the empire, while maintaining communal lands for farming. Above them were the nobles, priests, and warriors who held authority and wealth. Education was compulsory, a rare practice among ancient societies. Boys were trained in warfare, crafts, or priesthood, while girls learned domestic arts, weaving, and religious duties. The Kalamacac schools educated the children of nobles in leadership, rhetoric, and religious law, while the Telpochcali schools prepared commoners for military service. The Aztec economy thrived on trade and tribute. The bustling marketplace of Tlatelolco, adjacent to Tenochtitlan, was the commercial heart of the empire. Here, merchants, known as Pochteka, traded goods from distant lands, acting as both businessmen and spies for the state. They dealt in obsidian, textiles, gold, cocoa beans, used as currency, and exotic feathers. The economy was not based on coin, but on barter, with cacao beans being a key medium of exchange. Trade routes stretched across mountains and jungles, binding together the diverse regions of Mesoamerica under Aztec influence.
Art and architecture flourished alongside trade. Sculptors carved deities in basalt and jade. Painters recorded history on codices made from bark paper. Goldsmiths crafted ornaments that shimmered in sunlight. Every artistic expression carried religious meaning. Even the most decorative object had spiritual significance. Music and dance played essential roles in festivals and ceremonies, expressing devotion to the gods. The rhythm of drums and the sound of conch shells filled the air during sacred rituals that unified the community under divine guidance. The Aztecs also possessed remarkable knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. They developed a complex calendar system based on both solar and ritual cycles, the Xiuhpohali 365-day solar calendar and the Tonapahali 260-day sacred calendar. These calendars intertwined to form a 52-year cycle, which the Aztecs viewed as a cosmic era. At the end of each cycle, they held the new fire ceremony, extinguishing all lights across the empire and rekindling a single flame atop a sacred mountain to symbolize the renewal of the world. Their astronomical precision rivaled that of the Maya, and their understanding of agriculture, botany, and anatomy was advanced for their time. Despite their achievements, the Aztecs wielded through both awe and fear. The practice of human sacrifice, while deeply symbolic to them, horrified outsiders. Victims were often captured warriors or slaves chosen for ritual purposes. They were offered to appease gods and ensured the continuation of the sun and harvests. These rituals were public spectacles, somber yet sacred, reinforcing the divine authority of the priesthood and the emperor.
In the Aztec worldview, sacrifice was not cruelty, it was cosmic duty, maintaining balance between life and death, creation and destruction. Tenochtitlan's beauty was matched only by its power. The city's main plaza was dominated by the Great Temple and surrounded by palaces, schools, courts, and ball courts. The emperor's palace was vast, containing gardens, libraries, and even a zoo filled with exotic animals and birds. Aqueducts carried fresh water from the surrounding hills, and engineers designed advanced drainage systems to manage flooding. The city was a living testament to human creativity and discipline. By the late 15th century, the Aztec Empire stood as the dominant power of Mesoamerica. Its armies were feared, its markets flourished, and its temples reached toward the heavens. Yet, beneath the surface of this grandeur lay tension, resentment from subjugated peoples, political intrigue, and the weight of constant warfare. The empire's strength depended on expansion, and without new conquests, its foundations could weaken. Still, for over 2 centuries, the Aztecs had risen from wanderers to world builders, from refugees to rulers of an empire unmatched in the Americas. Their story, filled with myth and magnificence, remains one of the greatest tales of human civilization. As the sun set over the shimmering waters of Lake Texcoco, the priests lit fires atop the Templo Mayor, and the drums echoed across the valley. The people of Tenochtitlan looked upon their city with pride, unaware that beyond the ocean, strange ships were already setting sail, ships that would forever change the fate of their world.
The Aztec Empire stood as one of the most structured and disciplined civilizations in the ancient world, defined by its rigid hierarchy, deep spirituality, and vast influence across Mesoamerica. While their rise had been miraculous, their ability to maintain such an enormous empire for nearly 2 centuries rested on intricate systems of governance, religion, social organization, and diplomacy. The Aztecs built their world on balance between war and peace, life and death, human will and divine command. This balance was the soul of their civilization, and it shaped every aspect of Aztec existence. At the core of Aztec society was a well-defined social hierarchy that ensured both order and efficiency. Society was divided into distinct classes, with the emperor, the Hui Tlatoani, or Great Speaker, at the very top. He was the supreme ruler, seen not merely as a political leader, but as a sacred intermediary between the gods and his people. His authority was absolute, his word carried divine weight. Beneath him stood the nobility, or Pippleton, who controlled land, led armies, and served as priests, judges, and administrators. They were the guardians of tradition, responsible for maintaining order and upholding the moral and spiritual code of the empire. Below the nobles were the commoners, or Masehualten, who formed the backbone of Aztec society. They were farmers, craftsmen, merchants, and laborers, the people who built and sustained Tenochtitlan's magnificence. Despite their lower rank, they were respected for their hard work and loyalty to the state. Most commoners belonged to Calpulli, community groups that provided land for farming and organized collective responsibilities such as building projects and military service. Each Calpulli functioned like a miniature city-state, with its own temples, schools, and leaders, fostering a sense of belonging and shared duty. Further down the hierarchy were the serfs and slaves, or Tlacotin, though Aztec slavery was not the brutal institution often associated with other empires. Slavery in Aztec society could result from debt, punishment, or voluntary submission to escape poverty. Yet slaves had rights. They could marry, own property, and even buy their freedom. Their children were born free, emphasizing that in the Aztec world, servitude was a temporary condition, not a permanent stain. Education was another pillar of Aztec life, a remarkable feature that set them apart from many other ancient civilizations. Every child, regardless of class or gender, received an education. Boys and girls attended separate schools where they were taught not only practical skills, but also discipline, religion, and moral values. The Aztecs believed that ignorance was dangerous. Knowledge was sacred because it connected humans to the gods' wisdom.
Noble children attended the Kalmakek, where they studied religion, history, law, and leadership, preparing for roles as priests, judges, or administrators. Commoner children, on the other hand, attended the Telpuch Kali, where they trained in warfare, labor, and civic duty. Military service was considered one of the highest callings, and bravery in battle was the surest path to honor and upward mobility. Even a commoner could rise to noble status by capturing enemies alive and demonstrating valor on the battlefield. The military was, without question, one of the defining strengths of the Aztec Empire. War was not only a political necessity, but a sacred duty, a divine act essential to maintaining the universe. The Aztecs believed that the sun god Huitzilopochtli needed nourishment from human blood to rise each day and keep the cosmos in motion. Thus, warfare was both a physical and spiritual enterprise. The Aztec army was a disciplined, highly trained force led by professional warriors. Boys began military training at an early age, learning how to use obsidian-bladed weapons, such as the macuahuitl, wooden clubs edged with sharp volcanic glass capable of inflicting devastating injuries. Aztec warriors were categorized based on their achievements in battle. The Jaguar and Eagle warriors, elite military orders, were the most revered. To join their ranks, a warrior had to capture numerous enemies alive, for killing was less prestigious than capturing, since prisoners were needed for sacrificial ceremonies. These elite fighters wore fearsome animal costumes and were honored as heroes in society. Their bravery and loyalty ensured the empire's dominance over its vast territories.
Yet, the empire's success depended not only on military might, but on a sophisticated system of tribute and administration. Once conquered, city-states were allowed to keep their local rulers, provided they paid regular tribute to Tenochtitlán. Tribute came in the form of goods, maize, textiles, cocoa, gold, feathers, jade, and even human captives. These tributes filled the empire's treasuries and sustained its growing population. Inspectors, known as calpixque, ensured that tribute was collected and distributed properly, maintaining a delicate balance of power through both diplomacy and intimidation. Religion, however, was the heart that pumped life through the veins of the Aztec world. Every action, from planting crops to declaring war, was infused with spiritual significance. The Aztecs worshipped a complex pantheon of gods, each representing natural forces and cosmic principles. Among the most revered were Huitzilopochtli, god of the sun and war, Tlaloc, god of rain and fertility, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, god of wisdom, wind, and creation, and Tezcatlipoca, the god of destiny, conflict, and night. Together, these deities embodied the perpetual struggle between order and chaos, light and darkness. The Aztec view of the universe was cyclical. They believed that the world had been created and destroyed multiple times, each age or sun ending in catastrophe. The current age, known as the fifth sun, was sustained only through human sacrifice. They believed that the gods had sacrificed themselves to give life to humanity, and therefore humans were bound to return the favor by offering their own blood in gratitude. This belief was not seen as cruelty, but as sacred reciprocity, an exchange necessary for existence itself. The Templo Major, towering at the center of Tenochtitlan, symbolized this cosmic order. Its twin temples honored Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc, representing the dual forces of war and fertility, destruction and renewal. Every year, grand ceremonies took place there, drawing thousands of worshippers from across the empire. The rituals were meticulously planned, involving music, dance, offerings, and the ultimate act of devotion, human sacrifice. Priests, adorned in elaborate costumes, performed these rituals with precision, believing that each drop of blood fed the gods and kept the sun alive. The victims were not viewed as mere prisoners. They were sacred participants in a divine drama that ensured the world's continuity.
Beyond the temples and rituals, religion also influenced Aztec art, architecture, and literature. Murals depicted gods and celestial beings. Sculptures embodied divine power. Songs and poems expressed deep philosophical reflections on life and death. The Aztecs were skilled poets, and their rulers often composed verses meditating on the brevity of existence. One of the most famous examples comes from Nezahualcóyotl, the philosopher king of Texcoco, who wrote, "We only rise from sleep. We come only to dream. It is not true. It is not true that we come on earth to live." Such poetry reveals the introspective, almost existential depth of Aztec thought, a civilization fully aware of life's impermanence and the eternal cycles of creation and destruction. Daily life in the empire reflected the same balance between labor and devotion. The Aztecs were early risers, beginning their day with prayers and offerings to the household gods. Men worked the fields or practiced their crafts, while women managed homes, cooked, and wove intricate textiles that symbolized status and identity. The typical Aztec diet consisted of maize-based dishes, such as tortillas and tamales, accompanied by beans, squash, and chili peppers. Cocoa, reserved for nobles and warriors, was consumed as a luxurious beverage mixed with spices and honey. The Aztecs valued maize not just as food, but as a sacred gift from the gods, believing that humans themselves were made from corn dough in mythic creation stories. Markets were the bloodline of urban life. The grand marketplace at Tlatelolco, adjacent to Tenochtitlan, astonished visitors with its scale and organization. Thousands of merchants traded goods daily, from local produce to rare jewels brought from distant provinces. The Pochteca, elite merchant guilds, played vital roles not only in commerce, but also in espionage and diplomacy. Their long trading expeditions often doubled as intelligence missions, gathering information about potential enemies or rebellious territories. Law and justice were strictly enforced. The Aztec legal system was sophisticated, with written codes, courts, and judges at multiple levels. Punishments were severe. Theft, adultery, and corruption could lead to death, but they were designed to maintain moral order rather than mere retribution. The emperor himself was not above the law. Even nobles faced execution for crimes against the state. Justice to the Aztecs was a divine principle reflecting cosmic balance. To disturb it was to offend the gods themselves. Culturally, the Aztecs valued the arts, craftsmanship, and intellectual pursuits. Music and dance were essential parts of both public ceremonies and private celebrations. Instruments like drums, flutes, rattles, and shell trumpets accompanied sacred songs that praised the gods. Painters and scribes recorded history, astronomy, and genealogy in codices, pictorial manuscripts that combined imagery with symbolic writing. Unfortunately, most of these codices were destroyed by the Spanish, but a few surviving examples reveal the vibrancy of Aztec creativity and intellect. Another fascinating aspect of Aztec society was their medical knowledge. Healers, or Tzitzil, practiced herbal medicine and surgery with surprising sophistication. They used plants such as aloe, sage, and cactus for healing wounds, treating fevers, and curing infections. Aztec doctors also understood the importance of cleanliness, using steam baths called temazcal to promote health and purification. Religion and medicine were intertwined. Illness was seen as both a physical and spiritual imbalance that required ritual as well as remedy. The Aztec calendar, one of their most extraordinary achievements, reflected their mastery of timekeeping and astronomy. It consisted of two interlocking cycles, the Tonalpawali, a 260-day ritual calendar, and the Xiu-Pawali, a 365-day solar calendar. Every 52 years, these cycles aligned, marking the end of one cosmic era. During this time, the Aztecs performed the new fire ceremony, extinguishing all flames across the empire. Priests kindled a new sacred fire atop a mountain, and from that fire, torches were carried to every temple and home, symbolizing the renewal of life and the continuation of the world. It was a profound act of unity that reaffirmed their connection to the cosmos. Despite their power and achievements, the Aztecs were not invincible.
Their empire depended heavily on the tribute system, which bred resentment among conquered peoples. Many of these subjugated states longed for independence, viewing the Aztecs as oppressors. This underlying discontent would later prove disastrous when foreign invaders arrived on their shores. But in the height of their reign, the Aztecs saw themselves as chosen by the gods, destined to rule, to sacrifice, and to maintain the balance of the universe. By the early 16th century, Tenochtitlán had become the jewel of the Americas, a city of shining temples, bustling markets, and orderly streets. Canals reflected the sky like mirrors, and causeways stretched across the lake like ribbons of stone. Every morning, as the sun rose over the eastern mountains, its light touched the golden temples of Huitzilopochtli, reminding the people of their sacred duty to keep the world alive through faith, labor, and sacrifice. The Aztec world was one of extraordinary complexity, a civilization built on cosmic belief, military discipline, and social cohesion. Their achievements in architecture, governance, science, and art demonstrated the heights human ingenuity could reach even without iron, wheels, or beasts of burden. Yet their strength carried the seeds of vulnerability. The very devotion that sustained them could not prepare them for the unimaginable changes soon to come. For across the ocean, a new power was rising, one driven not by gods, but by gold, not by prophecy, but by conquest. The final chapter of the Aztec story was about to unfold, a clash that would bring two worlds face to face, forever altering the course of history.
By the early 16th century, the Aztec Empire stood as a monumental testament to human brilliance and divine faith. Its capital, Tenochtitlán, glistened like a jewel in the heart of Lake Texcoco, a floating city of temples, palaces, causeways, and markets that astonished all who beheld it. The empire stretched from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean, ruling over millions of people, collecting vast tributes and performing sacred rituals to sustain the cosmic order. But just as the Aztecs believed in cycles of creation and destruction, a new and final cycle was about to begin, one that would bring unimaginable devastation and transformation. Far beyond their horizon, across the Atlantic Ocean, Spanish ships were setting sail on voyages of conquest and exploration. Europe was entering the age of discovery, driven by greed, faith, and ambition. In 1519, a Spanish conquistador named Hernán Cortés landed on the shores of the Yucatan Peninsula, leading a small army of roughly 600 men. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for in technology: steel swords, armor, muskets, and horses, all unknown to the peoples of the New World. To the Aztecs, these strange men with pale skin, thunderous weapons, and giant beasts seemed like beings from the heavens. Rumors spread quickly across the empire, and anxiety grew among the priests and nobles of Tenochtitlan. Cortés and his men were not merely explorers, they were conquerors, driven by both spiritual zeal and material hunger. The Spanish crown sought to claim new lands for Christianity, while the conquistadores desired gold and glory. As Cortés marched inland, he encountered various indigenous groups who had long suffered under Aztec rule. Many of these peoples, including the Totonacs and the powerful Tlaxcalans, saw in the Spaniards a potential ally against their oppressors. Cortés, cunning and strategic, exploited this resentment skillfully. He forged alliances, gaining thousands of native warriors who would later play a decisive role in the fall of the Aztec Empire. As the Spaniards advanced, they encountered temples, idols, and rituals that both fascinated and horrified them. They misunderstood Aztec religion, seeing it as demonic rather than divine. Cortés, a man of deep Catholic faith and ruthless ambition, saw his mission as not only a conquest of land, but also of souls. His arrival in the Valley of Mexico was marked by omens, earthquakes, and celestial phenomena that unsettled the Aztec priests.
According to later chronicles, Emperor Moctezuma II, who ruled the empire at that time, was deeply troubled. He had heard prophecies foretelling the return of the god Quetzalcoatl, a feathered serpent deity who, legend said, would one day return from the east to reclaim his kingdom. When reports reached him of bearded men arriving from the direction of the sunrise, Moctezuma feared that the time had come. The meeting between Moctezuma II and Hernán Cortés remains one of the most dramatic encounters in world history. When the Spaniards entered Tenochtitlán in November 1519, they were astonished by the grandeur of the city, its wide avenues, gleaming temples, and vibrant markets that astonished all who beheld it. The empire stretched from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean, ruling over millions of people, collecting vast tributes and performing sacred rituals to sustain the cosmic order. But just as the Aztecs believed in cycles of creation and destruction, a new and final cycle was about to begin, one that would bring unimaginable devastation and transformation.
However, this initial courtesy concealed deep uncertainty. Moctezuma's caution was interpreted by the Spanish as weakness, and they soon took advantage of it. Within days, Cortés placed the emperor under house arrest, effectively seizing control of the city through its ruler. The Spaniards destroyed idols, melted down gold, and desecrated temples, enraging the people of Tenochtitlan. Tensions escalated until violence erupted. When Cortés left the city temporarily to confront a rival Spanish expedition on the coast, his second-in-command, Pedro de Alvarado, ordered a massacre during a religious festival, slaughtering unarmed Aztec nobles and priests. The act ignited an uprising. Upon Cortés's return, he found the city in chaos. The enraged Aztecs fought back fiercely, besieging the Spanish and their allies. Moctezuma, attempting to calm his people, was struck by stones thrown by his own subjects and later died under mysterious circumstances. The Spaniards, trapped and overwhelmed, fled the city on the night of June 30th, 1520, an event remembered as La Noche Triste, or the Night of Sorrows. Many Spaniards and their native allies drowned while crossing the causeways, weighed down with gold they tried to carry away. The survivors limped back to Tlaxcala, bloodied but determined. But the story did not end there. Cortés regrouped, rebuilt his army, and returned with reinforcements, including thousands of indigenous allies who sought revenge against the Aztecs. Meanwhile, Tenochtitlan suffered an invisible enemy, far deadlier than swords: smallpox. The disease brought by the Europeans spread rapidly through the empire, killing tens of thousands. The Aztecs had no immunity to such foreign illnesses, and the epidemic decimated their population, weakening their ability to resist. In May 1521, Cortés launched a full-scale siege on Tenochtitlan. The once mighty city, surrounded by water, became a battlefield of desperation. Spanish ships, built from dismantled materials carried over mountains, blockaded the lake. Day by day, the Spaniards destroyed bridges and aqueducts, cutting off the city's food and water supply. The Aztecs, led by the brave Emperor Cuauhtémoc, fought valiantly, refusing to surrender. He was young but courageous, determined to defend his people's honor to the very end. The siege lasted for nearly 3 months. Starvation, disease, and relentless attacks took their toll. Corpses floated in the canals, temples burned, and the great city that had once shone like a star began to crumble. On August 13, 1521, Cuauhtémoc was captured as he attempted to flee across the lake. With his capture, the Aztec Empire fell. Tenochtitlan lay in ruins, its temples destroyed, its people enslaved or dead. The Spanish built their new city, Mexico City, upon its ashes, symbolizing both the death of an ancient world and the birth of a new one.
The conquest of the Aztec Empire was not merely a military triumph, it was a cultural cataclysm. The Spaniards imposed their language, religion, and governance on the surviving peoples. Idols were shattered, temples demolished, and churches erected in their place.
Priests burned Aztec codices, erasing centuries of history and knowledge. Entire generations were taught to renounce their gods and embrace Christianity. Yet, despite these efforts, the spirit of the Aztec civilization refused to vanish completely. For centuries, the descendants of the Aztecs preserved fragments of their heritage, their language, Nahuatl, their agricultural techniques, their crafts, and their stories. In secret, some continued to honor ancient deities under the guise of Catholic saints. The old beliefs and the new faith blended together, creating a unique cultural fusion that still defines Mexico today. The Day of the Dead, for example, reflects this fusion, a celebration that honors both indigenous and Christian traditions, symbolizing the enduring link between life and death. The Spanish chroniclers who recorded the fall of the Aztecs often portrayed them as barbaric and bloodthirsty, but modern historians have revealed a more balanced truth, that the Aztec civilization was a complex, sophisticated society with profound achievements in engineering, art, education, and governance. The pyramids of Tenochtitlán, the beauty of their poetry, and the precision of their astronomy bear witness to a people of great intellect and imagination. The legacy of the Aztecs extends far beyond their empire's fall. Their influence shaped the identity of Mexico and continues to resonate across the world. The very symbol of modern Mexico, the eagle perched on a cactus devouring a serpent, comes directly from the Aztec founding legend. The name Mexico itself derives from Mexica, the Aztecs' own name for their people. Their language, Nahuatl, contributes countless words to modern Spanish and English, including chocolate, tomato, avocado, and coyote. Their contributions to agriculture, particularly the Chinampa system, remain a model of sustainable farming. Archaeologists have spent centuries uncovering the remnants of Tenochtitlan beneath the streets of Mexico City. The Templo Mayor, once buried under colonial buildings, has been excavated, revealing intricate carvings, offerings, and artifacts that tell the story of Aztec faith and resilience. Each discovery breathes new life into their memory, reminding humanity that even in destruction, culture can endure. The Aztecs' understanding of the universe also continues to inspire scholars and artists alike. Their dualistic worldview, that life and death, light and darkness were inseparable, resonates with philosophical depth. They saw existence as a sacred balance, where every act, from farming to warfare, was part of a divine rhythm. Modern scientists marvel at their calendrical system, which achieved remarkable accuracy without the instruments known to Europe at the time. Their architecture, aligned with celestial movements, reveals an advanced comprehension of astronomy and geometry. The story of the Aztecs is not just one of tragedy, it is one of transformation. Though their empire fell, their spirit lived on through the fusion of cultures that gave birth to modern Mexico. The Spanish conquest marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new world shaped by both indigenous and European influences. The songs, symbols, and traditions of the Aztecs were woven into the tapestry of Mexican identity, creating a rich blend that defines the nation to this day. Even the memory of their fall carries profound lessons. The Aztecs' rise from wanderers to world builders reminds humanity of the power of vision and unity. Their devotion to their gods, though often misunderstood, reflected a deep sense of duty to the cosmos. Their downfall, however, serves as a warning that empires, no matter how powerful, are vulnerable when pride blinds them to change and compassion. The combination of external conquest and internal weakness proved fatal, as it has for many civilizations throughout history. Today, millions of people around the world study and celebrate the Aztecs not as a lost people, but as a symbol of endurance and creativity. In museums, their artifacts stand as silent witnesses to their greatness. In Mexico,
Festivals and dances revived their ancient rituals, while scholars continued to decode the mysteries of their language and art. The Aztec calendar stone, with its intricate carvings and cosmic symbolism, remains one of the most recognized icons of human history, a reminder of how deeply they understood time, fate, and eternity. In recent years, there has been a resurgence of pride among indigenous communities in reclaiming their Aztec heritage. Nahua, the language schools have reopened, traditional ceremonies are performed once again, and young people embrace their ancestors' wisdom. The story of the Aztecs has come full circle, from conquest and suppression to rediscovery and revival. It is a story not only of a people, but of humanity's eternal struggle to understand its place in the universe. As the sun sets over the ruins of the Templo Mayor, casting golden light over the stones where priests once prayed and warriors once stood, one cannot help but feel the weight of history. The Aztecs may have fallen in battle, but their spirit endures, in the language of the people, in the rhythm of Mexican life, and in the memory of a civilization that sought to balance the heavens and the earth. The Aztecs taught the world that greatness is not measured only by conquest or wealth, but by the depth of faith, the beauty of art, and the courage to dream beyond one's limits. Their civilization, born from prophecy and sustained by vision, continues to inspire those who seek meaning in the cycle of rise and fall. As the legend of the eagle and the serpent reminds us, from struggle comes strength, from destruction comes rebirth. Those centuries have passed since Tenochtitlán sank beneath the waters of Lake Texcoco. Its heartbeat still echoes in the heart of Mexico. Every stone, every word, and every tradition tells the same eternal truth, that the spirit of the Aztecs, like the sun they worshipped, will never truly die.
Together, we discover. Every video is a step deeper into the world of wonder. If you enjoy learning, discovering, and exploring with us,